Hello, mentors. Welcome to our podcast series, Mentorships in Education, brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I am your host, Judith Epstein. I am very excited about the wide range of experts who have volunteered to give up their time and expertise. They will share their innovative ideas, their exciting perspectives, their rich resources, and their research with us. Please continue to delve into these topics on their websites and with your legal counsel, healthcare provider, and education professional. Our guests have information that will be relevant to mentors supporting struggling students, parents, teachers, administrators, legal support, and health professionals. We will address all levels of education with issues that affect academic performance. Our goal is to open discussions and introduce a variety of approaches to those searching for information in a free venue. So mentors, let me introduce our guest for today.
Hello, mentors. Welcome to the podcast, Mentorships in Education. This is episode 22. It's brought to you by Just Education at justeducationfirst.com. I hope you'll visit our website and look over our other episodes. We're also on YouTube, Spotify, and other social media. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and I want to thank our very special guest, who I am going to introduce to you in just one moment. We've discussed reading with specialists from all over the country. We've looked at it from many angles. Kids who struggle to read often are among those who struggle to write. But in general, getting kids to write is a huge challenge. It's a challenge for teachers. It's a challenge for students because many of the kids don't know how to begin to even develop or organize or edit what it is that they're writing. And teachers struggle to make writing an adventure rather than a chore. And our guest today has learned the secret to do just that. I want to welcome Steve Krasner. Welcome, Steve. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a challenge with everything we have going on, and I really appreciate your persistence in being here today. Before we get into talking to Steve, I'd like to tell you a little bit about him. Steve has a rather impressive resume, as he has done so many things over the years. He presently conducts interactive and collaborative and motivational classroom writing workshops for professional development for teachers and also supportive students in the classroom. He does this across the country under an umbrella organization which tells you exactly what he does in the classroom. His organization is called Nudging the Imagination, and it is at nudgingtheimagination.com. And this is what Steve does with our students. He helps to delve into their creative juices and show them that they can write, that they have that talent to write. He himself is an author. He's written 7 books that he's published. One of them is called Play Ball Like the Pros, which won a Parents' Choice Silver Award. He was a sports writer for 33 years, the last 22 of which he covered, the Boston Red Sox on a daily basis. He was a sports writer for the Providence, Rhode Island Journal, a newspaper. He retired in 2008. We're going to find out a little bit more how, my gosh, a sports writer, and now you go into the classroom and teach writing. Where did that come from? But we're going to talk to him a little bit about that. He's also the executive director of a Rhode Island Write on Sports camp, which is a camp for underserved middle school students. And we're going to learn a little bit about that as well, and how you can get some more information on that. He's been an adjunct professor at Bryant University teaching writing, and my gosh, we're going to post his resume for you along with the interview, and I hope that you will look at it and learn a little bit more about Steve, because he's an interesting guy to find out about. I will say, if you want to find out more about his family, then you should order his book called Why Not Call It Cow Juice, because he's based that on his family. And I did try and get it, but they were out of it. So it must be a popular book, Steve. So again, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
I thought I would start a little bit by asking you to talk to us a little bit about your background as a sports writer. And maybe then we can segue into how you got into the classroom. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. My sports writing career actually began because I wasn't a good enough baseball player. The bottom line is I wanted to be a professional baseball player when I grew up, and I played in high school and I played at Columbia University. I was pretty good, but apparently not good enough. But because I could write, I was able to spend 33 years getting paid to watch baseball games. That's one of the things I tell the kids, because I could write. So I knew as a second career, I wanted to have something that had something to do with sports. And writing about it was, to me, the next best thing. So I was able to be a sports editor in high school of our high school paper, sports editor of our college newspaper at Columbia, and was able to get a job at the Providence Journal pretty much right after graduation. So that's how the sports writing career began. And at the beginning of it, I mean, you name it, I was covering it, from rugby matches to tuna tournaments to, whatever you can name. I wrote a story about it. And then ultimately, as you said, the final 22 years of my career at the Providence Journal, I was able to cover the Boston Red Sox on a regular basis, which was a great combination for me. I mean, obviously, baseball I'm all about baseball. And being able to write about it obviously brought me to a lot of major events that remain special to me.
When you said your dream was to be a professional baseball player, when did you realize that dream was not going to come to fruition?
Well, senior year in college, you delude yourself and think, well, I'm really not that big. I weighed about 100. It's true. I weighed 113 pounds in college. And we played at this field where the Harlem River ran around the from right field to left field. And the equipment manager actually gave me bricks to put in my pockets. He would call me heavyweight. One day he brought me a couple of bricks. He said, hey, heavyweight, put these in your pockets. It's windy outside. We don't want you flying over into the river. So I was kind of getting the sense around junior and senior year that just wasn't going to be in my future, much as I would have liked to have given it at least 1 year, to be able to play as a professional. But along the way, as I said, because I was writing about sports, and I was just fortunate to be able to fall into that career.
Were you writing about sports in college?
I was the sports editor of the school paper, so yes, I wrote about it, and I was assigning it, and there were some days we didn't have many people on the staff. It was a daily newspaper also. Mm-hmm. And so there would be times when I say, listen, if I had 2 events to be covered on a certain day, and I only had one other reporter, I'd say, listen, you go cover the tennis match. I'm going to be at the baseball game anyway. I'm playing it, so I'll write about it. So I'd be standing at second base thinking, what am I going to write about this game? While the game was going on. So and summer times I worked at home here in Providence at a weekly newspaper called the Italian Echo. It was all about the Italo-American scene in Providence. So I sold some ads, I laid out the paper, I wrote some stories, did a little bit of everything.
So you had a good foundation when you realized you weren't going to be a professional sports player. You had a foundation for going out into the sports writing world.
I did. I had it to fall back on, and it was fortunate for me at the time that there was an opening at the Providence Journal in the sports department. Usually you started in the news department and get shifted over at some point, when there's an opening, because a lot of people want to cover sports. But I was fortunate to be able to start there, and that's it. As I said, as you said, I was there for 33 years.
So people who are listening might, kids in particular who are listening might think, oh, he really wanted to be a sports, professional sports player,
Mm-hmm.
a pro, and he didn't make the grade. He settled for being a sports writer.
Right.
Did you think of yourself as a failure at that point?
No, I probably, maybe I should have. I don't know, but no, I didn't think that way. I just thought, okay, what's plan B? So, that's one of the things you learn often, as life goes on, and plan A doesn't always come around. So whether you're a teacher in the classroom and you have a great lesson plan, all planned for that day, and then all of a sudden there's a fire drill in the middle of it, and it kind of throws everything off. You have to adjust. You go to plan B. So no, I just kind of saw it as, okay, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player, but I knew I wanted to do something that had something to do with sports, and for me, writing was the avenue for me.
And kind of that was your segue into being a sports writer. You loved sports. You were a good writer. You kind of put the two together at the base and
Sure.
came to the top of the triangle as a sports writer.
Mm-hmm.
You were very fortunate. And I'll just mention that, we see kids all the time. They have their heart set on doing a particular thing. They're adamant. They're almost myopic when it comes to what it is they want to do. And if they are not able to do that, they fall into, oh, well, what's the point anyway? I'm no good at anything. I can't. And you have some very important advice when it comes to that. And that is plan B.
And C and D, I like to say, and my family will back me up on this, I like to say I'm always thinking, one thing always leads to something else, and what about this? And suppose we did that. And so we need to keep the minds active. And that's why I call what I do nudging the imagination. Everyone has a creative muscle and needs exercise, as with any muscle. And that means you have to learn how to think and how to adjust and see things and change directions and certainly not feel as a failure, as you mentioned earlier, but just see it as, here's another step. Here's something else I can do.
So now this year at the end of the career, you're getting ready to retire as a sports writer, and you're saying, what am I going to be when I grow up?
Well, I was growing up, I'm not sure growing up is, I haven't gotten there yet. I'm getting there.
Oh, good, because I say that too.
Yeah, no, I'm still, no, I'm not grown up yet in my mind, but I had, what happened for me was that my wife and I have 3 children. And as they were going to school, I would volunteer to go into their classrooms, read stories, tell stories about Goldilocks and the 3 elephants, and all sorts of things like that. And so then when our oldest was in kindergarten, I volunteered to help the class write a story, get their own characters and setting, and I would sit at a laptop. And then that teacher knew her sister-in-law was a teacher, and she had me come into her class, and then in that way, it started to grow. This second career, Nudging the Imagination career, began to grow. So that I would volunteer. We wrote mystery dinner theater scripts. We wrote basic narratives and mysteries and tall tales and newspaper articles. Whatever the teacher, I would say to the teacher, well, what do you think? Why don't we try to write a series? And the teacher would say, okay, go ahead. So I kept visiting our own kids' classrooms, and then teacher to teacher, would have me visit other classrooms. And then a principal had me conduct a workshop for teachers, offering suggestions and helping to do some creative writing or get the kids thinking about writing. And so one thing kind of led to another, so that to the point where I started to go to conferences and was invited to speak at conferences, present at conferences, and I would have a table in the exhibit hall. And all of that started to tell me that, you know what I was doing had value. And while I said to the first principal asked me to do a teacher workshop, I said, listen, I don't see how this is going to happen. I mean, the teachers are there because they have to be, and here comes this sports writer who's going to tell them how to write. And I said to her, I'm not a teacher. And she said, well, you may not be a trained teacher, but what you're doing in the classroom is teaching. And so over time, I came to see what I was doing as teaching. And the conferences cemented that by the comments I was receiving, the feedback I was receiving. And so that as the years went on, it dovetailed nicely with my Providence Journal sports writing career, because I would cover the Red Sox from February to maybe September, October, and I would save my vacation time and comp time. And so I had time to go visit classrooms during that period. So, and not worry about having to cover an assignment for the Providence Journal. So it kind of grew that way. And to the point where I was saying to myself, you know what, there could be a second career here somehow, some way. And as time went on and our youngest got out of college and we did the happy dance, because that's what you do when you get out of college. We did the happy dance, and a short time later, several months later, a buyout was offered at the Providence Journal. In the meantime, I had already been visiting classrooms, decent pace, and even with an agent to help me. And so it was time for me to go. So after 33 years, they offered a buyout. I waved my hand and said, thank you very much. And that's how Nudging the Imagination became more of a full-time pursuit.
Was there a pivotal moment? I like to call it the aha moment. Was it when teachers started to tell you that, yes, you are teaching, you're going into the classroom teaching? Was it when an administrator asked you to do a workshop for the teachers? Was it when you went to a convention and you were setting up a table? Was it the culmination of all of these things when you all of a sudden said, was Nudging the Imagination formally developed at the beginning of this, or did it get formally developed in the middle? How did this all come about? What was the, was there a timeline, or was it just kind of like pulling at different things and all of a sudden you realized you had something?
Well, it was never a grand plan when I first started. And so it was just something I enjoyed doing. I mean, I just enjoyed being with the kids in the classroom and helping them write stories and having fun with them. And one of the teachers was working with a veteran teacher at another school and who was working on collaborative writing. So she arranged for me to go in and do my workshop in that woman's kindergarten classroom, I think it was. And so she said, you know what you're doing? She said, after I finished, she said, you're really nudging their imaginations. So I said, ooh, ding, ding, ding. So, so that's when Nudging the Imagination came in. And I just was going into our own kids' classrooms and having fun with the kids and writing stories and telling stories. And then the feedback was telling me from teachers that what I did had value. And then when the principal was telling me that she wanted me to do that professional development workshop, the feedback there was good. So what I would actually tell the teachers in my sessions was that, listen, I'll speak in English, you can listen in teacher. Because
I love that.
I didn't know all the buzzwords, and it became Nudging the Imagination because one of the teachers was working with a veteran teacher who was working on collaborative writing. And so this teacher arranged for me to go in and do a workshop for that veteran teacher. And when we were done, she said to me, you know what you're doing? You're nudging their imaginations. And that's how the name began. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of things. And then in 1999, it was the winter of 1999, if I'm not mistaken, I went out to San Diego. I was accepted to present a workshop at the International Reading Association conference, huge conference back in those days. Mm. And I gave did my workshop, and I had a table in the exhibit hall, and it was the feedback I was getting from the educators who were stopping at my table, and we were chatting for a while. That's when, in my mind, in 1999, that it became a grand plan of mine that, you know what, this could be a second career for me.
That was your aha moment.
That was
Really?
the moment. Yep,
That was the
that was the
moment.
moment.
That's very exciting. That's a great story. I love the I love the I'll speak in English.
I wasn't going to pretend.
Teacher.
I wasn't going to pretend that I knew. I mean, these are educators who have gone to
Right.
school for many, many years and
Right.
been in the business. I wasn't going to pretend I knew something I didn't know.
I love
But
that.
I did know that, having been in the classroom enough, that what I was doing was working, in the sense that it was motivating kids, getting them to write, and showing teachers ways in which they can incorporate writing across the curriculum with just a little imagination.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty a little bit.
Okay.
I'm going to sit back. You can go in whatever direction you want, but I'd like you to address a couple of different things. Number one, what are the different kinds of workshops that you do offer? What are some of the techniques that you use in the classroom to motivate the kids? And lastly, how do you address some of the more recalcitrant, troublesome students in the classroom without turning them off to you or to what it is you want them to be excited about? So I know those are three big topics, but let's see, what you can do with those, and do it however you want.
Okay, so the workshops themselves, I mean, each workshop is collaborative and interactive. Each workshop ties directly into the standards and the testing and all of that, but the best part is it shows students that writing can be fun, that there is a forum for their imagination. So from grades 1 to 3, basically what we do is we create our own narrative stories. So I will get characters and settings strictly from their own imagination listed on the board. As I say to them, we're like chefs. We're cooking up a story. That's our list of ingredients.
Oh, I like that.
Everything on our list of ingredients must find its way into our story at some point. We can't leave anything out, but you can't add anything either. And so now we've gone over the process. The goal is to involve everyone's voice in this process. Because, again, that's what we're showing them. Writing is a process. Mm-hmm. And so, in other words, we would use animal characters, but not animals you would have at home as a pet, and no one's name from the classroom. So who's got an animal first? A hand goes up. Okay, zebra. Okay, who's got a first name for the zebra? Go Giuseppe. Okay, so on the board it's Giuseppe Zebra. So that's 2 voices already right there. And so we ultimately wind up with 4 animal characters, 2 male, 2 female, and then we take suggestions for setting. It could be there are animals, there are story. It's our story, our imaginations, our characters. So therefore, we can do whatever we want with that story. There's no right or wrong. That's one of the great things about creative writing. So we could have them, it could be at an amusement park, these animals. They could be, the amusement park could be the zoo. They could be fishing on a lake. They could be whatever they want. And so I will sit at a laptop with that list of ingredients, and I'll say, okay, so who has the first sentence for our story? So in that way, we will get from the students, and obviously I'm directing them into a story, but we'll get the sentences, the best word, the better word, and show them how easy it is to revise, for instance. I'll ask them, who can give me another word for big? All the hands shoot up. Huge, enormous, gigantic, humongous. I'll say, okay, you know what you just did? No, you revised. Okay, and you did it well. Because teachers are always, nobody wants to revise. They whine and moan, oh, I already did it once. It's done. What do you want from me? But to show them how easy it is, we go through that. And I'll usually point to the kid who gives me the word humongous for some reason. I like that word. And I'll ask that kid a couple questions. Number 1, do you need to see a nurse right now? And he'll shake his head, no. Do you need a Band-Aid? You bleeding? No. See, revising is painless. It's not that big a deal. It doesn't hurt. The toughest thing about writing, I try to impress upon them, toughest thing about writing anything, and I don't care how old you are, how long you've been writing, the toughest thing about writing is writing it the first time. Once you've written it the first time, to go back over and polish it and give it a little massage is not nearly as difficult as you think. So in those grade levels, 1 to 3, we will write a story that will have a beginning, middle, and an end. Okay? And we'll vote for the title. We'll vote, we take some class votes at times. Now, grades 4 and up, I do a lot of different things. We will write in the same format. We will write mystery stories, not murder mysteries, but mystery stories. Something is missing. and we write it to a point at which a motive has been assigned to each character. And then I'm done. And the students get a copy of it, and they have to solve the mystery for themselves. Not only who did it, but two hows and a why in their narrative endings. How was the crime committed in more detail? Why was it committed in more detail? And how was the thief discovered in detail? There is no right or wrong. However, it's whatever follows, as long as it follows what's happened previously, then that the ending is okay. So that takes care of the mystery stories. And we also write newspaper articles. They learn the difference between a news story, a feature story, and a column. Different ways of looking at the same information. And that ties directly into social studies chapter review. We write tall tales. We create mystery dinner theater scripts from scratch that schools perform as spaghetti supper fundraisers. That's a collaborative thing, moving classroom to classroom to classroom over a 3-year period. Video magazine scripts that tie into social studies, collaborative chapter books of cliffhangers. So we do a lot of different things, but it's all about, having some fun with words, showing them it's okay to use your imagination, but also along the way, what pops up is use of dialogue and word choice and all of the elements that teachers are teaching. They come up naturally. Revision. It all comes up naturally in the course of creating whatever it is I'm creating in that individual classroom, and it's to show them writing can be fun.
I'm saying that the main thing you seem to use across the board is humor.
Well, I have a good time. I really enjoy doing this, and I'm like a big kid. So I'm a guy who has a gorilla suit in my closet. So. But I'll run up and down the aisle, I'll high five and whatever. And you asked earlier about kids who may be issues, maybe discipline and or interest issues.
Yes.
And I think because of the way I'm working, and don't forget, usually these workshops are 1 hour long, the mystery writing, narrative writing, not so much the residencies of video magazine scripts and mystery dinner theater scripts. But so I'm just passing through for an hour. So I don't mind them calling things out. I really don't. And I really don't have too much trouble snapping them back into attention, giving them the timeout sign and whatever. But if there's a student that, and I can tell when I walk in the classroom who the so-called tough kid is, to deal with the problem, because that kid's desk is usually to the right side of the room, shoved halfway through the wall. It's halfway through the wall by the spring.
Right.
And so, but because of the way I'm doing things and I'm encouraging them to call out ideas, I don't have a problem if they call out ideas, if they fall off their chairs. It doesn't matter to me as long as they're with me. Now, when they're calling out suggestions, I try to make sure I can't use everyone's suggestions. And some, as we point out, depending on the age level and the depth I go into it, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Some ideas will work better for us than others, but it doesn't mean if we don't take your idea right away, it doesn't mean you were wrong. It doesn't mean it was bad. It just means that let's keep thinking. That's what authors do. That's what writers do. They come up with another word. What's another word? And in that way, we're going to get to the best word, the best sentence, the best title. That's what the author is after. So if there's a kid that maybe is an issue, that kid doesn't tend to be an issue for me so much, because I will make sure I get something from that student. Sometimes, every now and then, there might be an inappropriate suggestion.
I was going to ask you about what about the students that's rude? Yeah,
and so there might be I've developed what the kids already have, which is selective hearing, okay? So I'll let it pass by me once. I'll let it pass by me twice, and I'm hearing everything. The third time, I give that kid a look. And the wrinkles. Well, my kids call the wrinkles because I have no hair. So I get the skin on my forehead there. And I said, listen, I'll say, listen, that can't fly, and I don't blame the kid for pushing the boundaries here, because I'm different. I'm letting them call things out. I'm letting them, this is different. Whoa, I'll give it a shot. So, but what I will do is to make sure I haven't lost that kid right away. I will make sure I include that kid's voice in the story, whether by giving me a color or a number, something that's, I never want to put a student on the spot. So these suggestions that are coming, you can always involve a student, the quiet students, with give me a number less than 10. Give me a color, for the bathing suit that the elephant is wearing. It could be, red, green, chartreuse.
Right.
We don't care how many colors, but we have all those different voices, and they feel like they're part of the story. How many bags of peanuts did the elephant eat? Now point to 3 kids. Give me a number less than 10. And I end up with 273 bags. But that's 3 voices in the story.
Right.
Each one gave. And the next time I say, ooh, I need a number, those hands are up. Because they're part of the story. It's not intimidating. We don't want to put anyone on the spot. But somehow, some way, we can always find a way to add a student's voice to the process.
So this is what you do with the students when you're working with them.
Mm-hmm.
How do you relate to the teachers or the administration if you're doing a workshop with them? And I mean, I would imagine, not being a teacher, there's a certain amount of humility in standing in front of these people. As you say, I'm not a teacher and I'm telling them what to do. How do you ingratiate yourself to them when you're pretty much telling them what to do?
Well, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time now. It started when our oldest was 4 years old in her preschool, the Little Red Hen. And she's going to be 40 this summer.
Ah, okay.
So I've been doing this a long time, and so I know what works, what can work. But what I do in my professional development workshops is the teachers and or administrators, they become my classroom. They're my second graders. They're my fifth graders.
Oh, all right.
So we actually start to create a story. I'll read some stories as pre-writing activity. I'll say, okay, give me, and we'll actually create the a list of ingredients, and we'll actually create a sentence or 2 of the story. And depending on how much, whether it's a 1-hour workshop or a full day workshop or whatever, if it's a full day workshop, we may have, depending on how many people there are, divide them up into groups so they write their own stories from that beginning and from that list of ingredients. But we go through every type of workshop I do. I take them through it, and either they're collaborating or it's interactive. Every workshop I do is interactive. With the staffs as well as the kids.
You're modeling for them what it is that you want them to do, pretty much.
Exactly.
Just like you would with the kids.
And we go over, what comes up. Ooh, look what we just did. We just revised. See, this is how you say it to your students.
Right.
Ooh, wow, how about that? Or, you do little things such as, you have a dictionary in the classroom. I know everyone goes online, but there's still always a physical dictionary. And I'll say, listen, the poor dictionary just sits over there gathering dust. It never sees a kid, and anytime it sees a kid, the kid's shuffling over there with a disgusted and a sad face because I knew I should have used the word big instead of humongous. I wouldn't have gotten a red mark, right? And so, so what I say to the teachers is, okay, so have the class give the dictionary a name. Call it Danielle. Give it a wig and a funny nose or whatever. Put a bell over there.
Oh, I love that. That's
so now
cute.
When you say, okay, do me a favor, you got close here. I don't want the word big. Yeah, there's no red mark here, but I want huge, enormous, gigantic, humongous, right? Better words. And so if you don't spell it correctly, I'm going to give you extra points, for giving it a shot. Now, do me a favor to get all the extra points. Go see Danielle. She's dying to see you kids. I mean, she never sees anybody. She always, but tell her I said hello. Ring the bell when you got there, so I know that this neighborhood, this time of day, can be tough. So now you go over with a little smile, and as a teacher, what you do is you when you're putting stuff on the board, you say to the class, "Oh, you know what? I'm not sure how to spell this word. I think I do. You know what? Time out. I need to go see Danielle." And so again, there's that modeling aspect that you're talking about.
Right.
You go because it's not a big deal to use the dictionary. The bigger the deal we make of things, the bigger the deal it becomes, so relax. We'll get the revision done. Relax. We'll get the capital letters where they belong. Whether you put on a sock puppet and call it Captain Capital, and when you're going to revise your story, and another thing, other things that ways in which nobody wants to revise. Let's take that for granted, right?
Right.
I
don't even like to revise.
Nobody
Right.
wants to revise. But I mean, if you're a kid and you're writing on those papers, now you have to change words and you start erasing on the paper, and the paper rips, and now you have to do the whole thing over again. So my suggestion is note cards. If they put certain basic words on the note card and line them up as if you're lining a choo-choo train, and put them in that order. Now read it. How does that sound? Ooh, you know what? Maybe card number 4 needs to be card number 2, and card number 2 needs to be card number 7. And let's try it that way. Let's read that. And maybe you do that 4 times. In essence, you just revised 4 times, but you didn't have to tear the paper. So now once you have it, now you write it, put it on paper. So simple. I'm all about simple. Nothing has to be a major production necessarily, and the simpler we can make it, the less stressful it has to be for them and for us as teachers, the better. And where is it written? You can't smile and laugh, in the course of a classroom day. Not everything can be flash and dazzle, I like to say, but more can be fun and interactive than you think. And I know there's a lot of emphasis placed on the testing. But if we can do all of this and get them to have a little fun while they're writing and show them that there are different kinds of writing, that we don't just write to a test, that there are other ways to write, I think that's important. And another lesson I get to share with the educators is that, to me, writing is not formulaic. If you have to write in a certain way for testing purposes, fine. But the students need to see there are other ways to write, because the 5-paragraph essay is not the be-all, end-all. I'm sorry. And it doesn't and I was surprised in teaching college students, college freshmen, that formula still had them by the throat, because it's not how anyone writes in the real world. Right. So while I can understand that it can be a foundation, and helpful for beginning early writers, I mean, we need to show them that there are other ways to write and get your point across. That's not it. And so to that end, in my sessions, I always make it a point to say, for the Providence Journal, major newspaper, I once wrote a 1-word first paragraph. And after they've caught their breath and picked themselves up off the floor, I tell them in 2004, when the Red Sox won the World Series for the first time in 1,000 years, the first paragraph to my story was the word finally. Oh. because writing is about purpose and audience, right? So that if you didn't know about the Red Sox and you picked up the paper and you read this story, you'd say to yourself, what is he talking about? But I wasn't writing for that person. I'm writing for the sports fan. And the sports fan knew exactly what that meant. I didn't have to say any more in my first paragraph. They knew what it meant. Now, obviously, right after that, you get into who, what, why, when, and where, and all of that. Right. But I mean, so that's one way I like to show that writing is not formulaic. And what I tell my college students is that everything you write has its own personality. What you can do with one, you can't necessarily do with another. If you can start with an anecdote for one type of paper you're writing. You can start with a quote. You can start directly. But the content kind of determines what you can do and how you can do it.
That's great. You have so many great ideas. I wonder if we shouldn't develop some bullet points that that we can put up there. Do you prepare differently? I'm not in terms of age groups, because I know you would prepare differently in terms of age groups, but when you find out you're going into a particular class, maybe they've given you the heads up on this is the dynamics of this class maybe are a little more challenging than the dynamics of the general classroom. Do you get that kind of information before you go in? Do you prepare any differently for that?
No, I don't really ask for it, and I don't prepare differently. I mean, as I said, I've been going to classrooms a lot of years now, so it doesn't take me long to figure out the personality of the class when I'm in there. Okay. Some classes I know I can joke with a little more and still be able to snap them back. Other classes, if I make a joke and I realize, well, wait a minute, they're a little less mature than I would expect at this particular grade level, then I kind of alter my approach.
Scale it back a little.
Yeah. So, but I don't really need to know. I mean, the teachers generally take care of who shouldn't sit next to whom, because I prefer when I'm in the classroom doing a writing workshop that they sit at their desks and not on the rug in front of me. And
okay.
one of the reasons I do that is the nudge factor. This one this one stepped on me. This one pulled my shoulder. This one
literal
exactly.
nudging.
Right. And so I have them sit at their desks. I find that to be most effective.
I also would imagine it's more effective for them to be interactive with you when you are wanting them to write things or play with words or make a list of words, or it's easier for them to do that at their desk, I would imagine, than sitting on the floor. I mean, it's like work mode and
correct
play mode as opposed,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the way it's worked out. And also, when I do write, I don't actually use the wicked smart boards, that they have. And the reason is I'm typing so fast at my computer and my laptop that I'm making mistakes. And if those were projected, the students would lose the focus. Oh, look, he spelled that wrong. Oh, look, he did it. Yeah. And then now I've lost them. So it's a great tool for editing, especially in revising, those wicked smart boards.
Right.
But for my purposes, when I'm in there now, what I also say to teachers during the workshops is listen, I have to do all of this in an hour. Okay? You don't. And it's not as if I'm suggesting you have so much time in the day you don't know what to do with it. But there are those odd times, like the 2 minutes before you go home, the 3 minutes before lunch. So you get the characters on one of those times. You get the setting another one of those times. You write a first sentence another one of those times. And so you can take your time, in essence, creating the story. I have to do it all at once in an hour when I'm in the classroom. But it gives them an opportunity to think about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it grows and they add to it. And then the goal is independent, enthusiastic writers, so that if you can model for them as the teacher, based on what I've done in the classroom, and you get a sentence or two. So now, you do that for a couple stories, get them from beginning to end. Then as the year goes along, you divide the class into groups of 4, let's say, and you still have the same list of ingredients. So you have 5 or 6 different stories. But as long as they include all the ingredients on the list, that's fine. That's good. It's a good way to see that there's no one way to do things. And then as the year goes on, now 2 kids at a time. You divide them up into 2s, and by the end of the year, each student is writing his or her own individual story based on the list of ingredients, and knowing that there is no right or wrong.
You mentioned, that the teachers are cognizant of the testing that they need to do. And so I'm assuming you're alluding to, like Common Core and those requirements. What is your feeling about that in the 5-paragraph essay? And do you address that in the classroom with the teachers? Not with the kids, but with the teachers?
I do, because much like, as I said earlier, the one word first paragraph, because writing is not formulaic in my mind. And so, yes, I do address it, and I address it in the sense that, listen, I know you kind of have to do it. I understand. It's part of what you have to do, and I can't ignore that. I mean, nor can you.
Right.
And it's probably not something you want to do, and it's not something they want to do. So it's okay, we get through it. But they also need to see there are other times that there's other types of writing, so that they don't just equate writing with the boring 5-paragraph essay or getting ready for the MCAS. So and to that end, if you're writing these basic narratives and or mystery stories the way I do, you can. Another thing I suggest they do is read stories, read picture books to their kids, especially in elementary school, obviously, on those odd times, 3 minutes before lunch, 2 minutes before recess, because it just for no other reason except for the story, just to read the book, not for what's the foreshadowing, what do we see here, look how they use this word, what vocabulary would you change? No. Just read the book, And so to just show that there is an appreciation for the written word and have some fun with it, so that
you encourage them to do that with older kids too.
Well, you know what? I've read picture books to middle school students, and I know the reaction I'm going to get. as at the start. They look at each other, they roll their eyes. I can just hear them say, what is this guy? Who's he what does he think we are? A little kid. But if you keep going, now they're leaning forward and their mouths are open and they're hanging on the words, So you don't necessarily have to read picture books to middle school students, but if you read, like middle school novels, and
Right.
but choose, I always say to the teachers, choose a book that you like, because your love for that book will translate to the students. And over time, especially in elementary school, if you're reading some picture books, over time what will happen is they'll start to bring in their own picture books and say, could you read mine today? And in that way, so we've got them, they're reading books. It's about the joy of the written word, and it's not just the 5-paragraph essay and the MCAS and the testing. Do they have to do that? Sure. Okay, I acknowledge. Yes, they do. But they need to be able to do other things as well.
Before we end, I want to spend a few minutes on some other things. And I'm interested in this sports camp that you have and how you integrate students who come into the camp with sports in mind, and
Right.
you bring in the writing. What is that all about? And when did you start this? And how did it come about?
Okay, it's a sports writing camp. It's not a sports camp, and that's what the
Sports
kids
writing camp, right?
It's a sports writing camp. So,
Right.
we call it Rhode Island Write on Sports, and Write is spelled WRITE. And so we are an affiliate. The organization started in New Jersey, Write on Sports, started in New Jersey 15 years ago. And the founder's mission was to give middle school students, underserved middle school students, the kids who may or may not stay in school or want to tune out to school, give them an opportunity to write about something they care about, sports. So I got to know this guy through mutual friends, and so we've had our camps, and we've done it for 6 years now. And so over the course of 2 weeks, it's a day camp. The kids are in camp from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. And totally free for them. It's a nonprofit organization. The busing is free, the lunch is free, and that kind of thing. Over the course of 2 weeks, they write feature stories of a sports topic of their choosing. It could be the Red Sox. It could be competitive hot dog eating. We don't really care, because it's about the process of writing. And I say the same thing to elementary school kids, to the middle school kids at the camp, to my college kids. Writing, when you break it down, is a very simple process. It goes from idea to angle to research to write, revise. No matter what you do and how old you are, how long you've been writing, in essence, that's what it boils down to. So the students, over the course of 2 weeks, they create their own feature story. They collaborate to create 2 to 3 minute videos of a sports topic of their choosing, and that involves writing a script as well as the actual filming and editing and all of that. They also, we have model interviews. We bring in celebrities, sports celebrities, and the sports journalists, and we have model interviews that our kids participate in, and we also do a field trip. So over the course of 2 weeks, it's a jam-packed with education, but fun, because it's a summertime thing, and we deal with students of all different writing abilities, so that we're aware that to get a 2-paragraph story out of one kid is going to be a lot, whereas another kid we have to narrow down from 9 paragraphs to 5.
Where is the camp?
We've had the last 3 years we've run 2 camps. One at Providence College, and those students have come mostly from Providence and Cranston communities. And then the other camp has been at Bryant University, where we have students who come from Central Falls, Pawtucket, and Woonsocket. And we were hoping this year to have a 3rd camp open at Salve Regina in the Newport area. But what's going on right now is that may not happen. Let's put it that way.
But everybody who goes there has to be within driving distance, because it's not an overnight camp.
Driving or bus. No, it's we have free busing for the students.
But, okay, all
so
right.
They can be dropped off, but transportation is taken care of for them.
So when you say underserved students, Do the students have to be recommended by someone? Do they have to meet some criteria in order to be able to get into the camp?
Well, we have one of our major partners is the College Crusade of Rhode Island, another nonprofit organization that runs programs for middle school and high school kids. Mm-hmm. And if you become a Crusader and you go to their programs, you accrue points, which turn into scholarship dollars. Oh. So they're our major partner. They help us recruit. We get some of their advisors, teachers, to work our camps as well. But they do a lot of the recruiting of students for us, and I do as well, because I know what schools to visit, as they do, for the population that we're seeking for the camp.
So the work you do in the schools, where you go in and work with the students and the staff, and this camp, are those all under the umbrella of the Nudging
No, Nudging the Imagination is the visiting of the classrooms.
Okay.
My personal visiting the classrooms and the professional development workshops. The Rhode Island Right on Sports nonprofit organization is strictly the summer sports writing camps.
And you serve on the board there, is that it? You serve on a board of the camp?
Well, we have a very specialized board at the camp. There's myself, my wife, and my youngest daughter.
I love it. Okay.
So that's our board of directors.
That's fine. I just was trying to understand.
We had 8 students our first year at a camp at Calcutt Middle School in Central Falls, Rhode Island. And this past year at the 2 camps, we had a total of 59 kids.
Wow.
And with a waiting list at the Providence College camp. So
I'm going to let you have the last few words. Are there any important tidbits, suggestions that you can give to parents who are at home with their kids now during this particular time, trying to encourage them to get their writing assignments done?
Yes. I would say, well, I mean, it's difficult for parents at home, these months.
Yes.
Because, there are different circumstances, each family, but I mean, they're probably trying to work from home, and they get the 7-year-old that they're trying to do lessons with. And meanwhile, the 3-year-old is knocking over things and writing on her face. And I mean, so it's a serious challenge, and it's an awful lot to ask of them. So my only suggestion would be relax, just do the best you can. Take time when you need to take time. It doesn't, I know there have been people say just structure it the same way you structure a school day. For some kids that'll work, for some kids it won't work.
Right.
If you notice that, this kid just the writing isn't happening right now, we need to go outside and play in the swing set. And then we'll come back in and do the writing. So, it's an awful lot that's being asked of the parents. And so all I say is relax. And I say the same thing to teachers. Relax. Everything will get done. We'll get it under control. And whether you end up writing, at 7:00 at night, as you go into bed and you say, oh, you know what, let's write a story. Instead of reading a bedtime story, let's write a story. Right. I mean, I just wrote for my 6-year-old granddaughter who stays over every now and then, and she's really bright. She's in kindergarten, and we create our own stories, and ultimately we'll write our own book together. So I wrote a story for the other day about Papa Stevie Shark and Juliana Fish. That it's a story we tell each other, during bedtimes. But I mean, just have some fun with words and create some silliness. It doesn't really matter, But as far as the strict lessons go, all you can do is the best you can do. That's it, And
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because one of the things I get asked from parents so often is now when I do Zoom sessions with my kids rather than going to their house, and parents say to me, I don't know what to do. My child is frustrated. I'm frustrated. Mm-hmm. They don't feel like doing things the way they want, the way I want them to do them, the way their teacher is asking them to do it. I don't want to be the bad guy all the time, but I want to get them to do the work. And I'm so glad you said in a different way what I say to them: calm down, relax, 10 years from now, I say, your child isn't going to remember whether or not they got that math assignment done or that writing assignment done. But what they are going to remember is the dynamics of the family during this time.
Absolutely.
And that's the important thing. Just, relax, go out and play if you have to go out and play. Things will get done. Their child will catch up eventually when they get back to school.
Exactly. One other thing they can do is their kids are co-conspirators. We're in this together. So the parent says, listen, I don't even know how to do this math. Help me out here. What is it you're doing?
I like
it. So, and in that way, let's little role reversal, and then
right.
you can plop in those helpful. Well, what about if you added 10 here, or what about if you wrote, I don't get it, or I'll write the same way you write, or you're right about you don't want this to create any kind of wedge between the parent and the child. That's my
concern, right?
And it can easily happen that way because, as you said, the frustrations on both ends. It's a learning process for everyone, and it's not realistic. I deal with college kids, right? So I'm doing online teaching with the college kids, and we were just talking about this yesterday, and I was doing some one-on-ones with them today. And the motivation for them, these are college kids now. Oh, there's just too many distractions at home. I'm just sitting in my bed and I don't feel like doing this assignment. And well, picture a third grader or a second grader. They're home. They want to go see Frozen 2 again on the video. And so we have to take all of that into account. And as you said, let's just relax and do the best we can. That's all you can do. And then everyone will be in the same boat, by the time you get back to school, hopefully next fall.
Oh, I hope. We can only hope.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing so many great ideas. I'm furiously taking notes down here. And I will give you credit for every suggestion I make.
Okay,
but you have some great suggestions. I very much appreciate your time. I want to welcome you to the podcast, and I hope that we'll get to see you again along the way as you progress through your different challenges and your exciting experiments that you're doing in the classroom. I want to thank our listeners also. Thank you so much, all of you mentors, for joining us today. I hope you will go and visit the website at justeducationfirst.com or look for this podcast and other podcasts on YouTube or Spotify or other social media. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful holiday coming up, Passover and Easter to all of our mentors. And I hope to see you soon on the next podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, mentors, for being with us today. If you found this podcast of value, please visit justeducationfirst.com to subscribe to our blog and Mentorship and Education podcast, so that you may continue the exploration with us. Our goal is to provide a free treasury of information for our listeners so they can become acquainted with the amazing resources that we have available to us. We want to thank all of our guests for giving their time and sharing their wealth of information with us. Please also visit their websites and explore more of their resources to further your pursuit of the topic. Hope to hear from you at justeducationfirst.com. Have a good week, and thank you.